Unfiltered, episode 43 on the Fish on First podcast network. I am here with my co-host Isaac Azout, and we are here with the founder of Fish on First, Ely Sussman. Isaac, what's up? Marlins drop us their first series in a while against the Seattle Mariners. Edward didn't look too good. Gave up two homers, one to a guy named Mike Ford who was hitting under 200. Other one to Kyle Raleigh, who had a very quiet 30 homer year. But besides that, Miami tries to salvage it again. We are recording on Wednesday, June 14th, right before the Seattle Mariners and the Miami Marlins face off in the final game, where it's Eury versus former Marlins prospect Luis Castillo. What's up, Isaac?
Yeah, it had been a while since you and I have done this, and it had been even longer time since it was just us with no guests. So I thought now was a good time to get to do this, talk about the current state of the team, which is it's a different opinion that I have for them than it was 2 days ago. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
Eli, what's up?
Yeah. Things are interesting. Things are, as everybody has recognized, going better than hoped for so much of this year. And now when you lose a couple of games for a team like this that we just know is going to, when it comes to like trade deadline time, every single game is so pivotal between deciding exactly where they stand, their competitive window, exactly what needs they have to address. Things change, even though it's such a long season, things constantly change back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So they're just right smack dab in the middle of this really long road trip. The last really long road trip, they made it through in pretty good shape at the end. And as we'll put this out when it's still hanging in suspense. So we'll still have to find out on the other end of this exactly how they make it through and where they go from here. But overall, yeah, this has been a fun season to follow this team. And we chose a really good time to make the switch to Fish on First. So once again, thanks everybody that has supported us since we came over right here. And you should be getting the podcast exactly the way that you have been getting it before. So that's the most important thing, is we continue giving you all the content you guys want, exactly where you expect to get it.
If you're a first-time listener, make sure to subscribe on the YouTube, Fish on First. Same thing when it comes to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. So let's get into the Seattle series a little bit. I know there's still one game left, but a lot has gone down in the last, 48 hours since last time we were live, which was on Fish on First Live, discussing the series. There's some extra moves made, some injury news, but most importantly, the game itself. Let's go into those first two games. Luzardo got rocked. I wasn't able to watch it. The Miami Heat were playing. Isaac, your thoughts on Luzardo's outing? Probably his worst outing up to of the year, you would say.
Yeah, that was the debut of Isaac's locks, and boy, is locks not the correct word to use. Right away, just things went south so quickly in that one for Luzardo. Giving the lead-off double to Crawford, and then the run scores on the double to left, and then De La Cruz has a misplay, and then he starts giving up a home run, a 3-run shot, I believe it was. So just him and Edward Cabrera both suffering from the long ball is not what you want from these two very young pitchers. So we'll talk about Cabrera in a little bit, but yeah, neither of these games have been close at all, and the Luzardo one was especially devastating. I would put as the word.
And I think something I wanted to mention is just how good Seattle's pitching is, because then you look at it on the other end, the offensive end, Miami could not get anything going. The only thing they got was a solo home run from Nick Fortes, and I believe that was the only hit in the first game. And then in last night's game, Miami, it was in garbage time when they got something going. I know they had, the one run they scored off of George Kirby, who, by the way, had a phenomenal outing. Career high 10 strikeouts, went 6 innings. He shoved, didn't walk anyone, which is nothing surprising on his end. It was an unearned run. So Seattle's pitching is phenomenal. Miami's offense just going to get it going. And for a team that is in third place, they don't really look like your typical third place team. It's just how good the AL West is. But Eli, the offense just struggles. Can we expect this moving forward? I know you have Washington, but I think you've said this many times that Washington and Miami are a pretty similar team in terms of how good, and Washington's been pretty good.
I don't know if I feel that way anymore. I felt that way several weeks ago. I mean, the Nationals are kind of settling into who we thought they were going to be. I think the Marlins are a more comparable team to the Mariners. So this is disappointing any way you slice it, to have back-to-back games where you lose by such big margins, as you said. And what sticks out to me is just Luis Arraez having, to this point, arguably his worst series as a Marlin, because he hasn't done anything. He hasn't gotten hits. And the fact that this is predictable. I've tried to warn people, he's not going to actually flirt with 400 this year. The question is exactly whether he can lead the league again, which he probably will in batting average, but he's not a superhero. There's still some limitation. There's a ceiling on this guy, and sometimes your hits are just not going to find the grass the way that they were at certain points. There have been a couple times in just the last couple of days where he's hit the ball solidly, and it's just been a few inches in the wrong direction, and the fielder was able to come up with it. So he's down to 384, all the lowest season in several weeks. So without him getting on base, that's a big piece of your offense that's missing. Your subplot is following up on what's happening with Joey Wendell. Did he? Yeah. I don't think he played in either of these past two games, despite them both against left-handed pitching, right-handed pitching. With him having the advantage, you expect him to start. So that's just like another piece that's not even been available to them the last couple of days. But as I said before, it's just a really small sample to overreact to one way or another. I think what everybody recognizes is that the offense you saw during the Royals and the A's in the White Sox series, like that is not realistic representation of the ability that they had. This team, what they've done, and you have to give them credit for, is they absolutely destroyed the soft part of their schedule, and that counts. And that is something that is not an automatic. It is not usually that easy to beat up on teams just because you're a little bit better than them. And by banking those wins, it has changed the perception of the season, where they're a team that is now kind of in control of their destiny moving forward. Where if they continue to like just hover around 500 the rest of the season, they might make the playoffs. That's really the simple bar right now, is just being a decent team the rest of the way. And they've given themselves a nice cushion here. The offense is still something that needs to improve. And it needs to improve from what they can, making those small adjustments internally by making sure your best players are actually playing and some of your worst players are not playing. We might not get into that on this show, but there's some things they can do internally just to put their best talent on the field. And then more importantly, things that they'll have to do transactionally to acquire guys from outside the organization that can help them.
When it comes to the offense, though, I think they look kind of like what we expected in Chicago, because Chicago's bullpen is really, really good. I mean, you look at those names and it's impressive. And I know, and I think we were talking about this, but, like, despite them, not playing up to expectations, their bullpen is still good. So I would agree with what you said in terms of the offense when it comes to the Mariners and the Athletics and the Royals, because those are arguably the two worst teams in Major League Baseball right now. And then you have the White Sox, which is not a good team, still fighting for an AL, somehow still fighting for the AL Central there, but their bullpen's good. And I would say Miami kind of got to them in the right way, and especially when it comes to that, that final game where they were down 4 runs, they've proven that they could come back from that type of a deficit before, and they did it this time around. But moving to Edward Cabrera's start, where he goes 4 innings, 4 hits, 5 runs, all earned, 3 walks, 4 Ks, 2 home runs, 85 innings pitched. This is probably Edwards. This is the first time he's given up multi-home runs since his start against the Braves a couple weeks back or months back. Isaac, just your thoughts on Eddie, and we were talking about this. He's kind of shied away from that curveball a little more, going with the fastball changeup combo. He used the curveball. The one time he used it, I guess more of it as a put-away pitch. It ended up being Cal Raleigh's home run to give the Mariners a 3-0 lead. So not good there. What do you do with Edward moving on? I get this point with injuries, I would assume just keep him in the lineup, let him in the rotation. And just let him go out there and get going.
Yeah, it's inconsistent is the word with Edward Cabrera, especially with that curveball. I think it was Fish Unfiltered that tweeted it out. You couldn't throw a better one than he did to Julio Rodriguez to strike him out, and then he left a middle curveball right at Cal Raleigh's wheelhouse for a 3-run home run. And when you give up those 3-run shots so early in the game, it's such a devastating blow to the team that's already facing a really good pitcher, that just came off of facing another really good pitcher, and that has another good pitcher to face the next day. So it's just really deflating for Cabrera. And yeah, I think the Marlins do have an issue with Cabrera. He has not once pitched into the 7th inning yet this year, or recorded an out in the 7th inning, I should say. He hasn't walked anyone in only one start all year long. The home runs haven't been too much of an issue, but he's still given up 9 of them. I would be a little bit perturbed. And I know we talk about Trevor coming back, and that's when Eury would go down. I think the Marlins need to seriously consider Eury possibly taking Edwards' place there. I know it's probably not an option considering Eury's innings limit, but Cabrera's got an option left, And if they really are serious about this, playoff run, quote unquote, later in the season, they're gonna have to figure something out with Cabrera, because he is not performing the way the team had hoped, the way we had hoped, or the way we had expected. It's been looking very, very inconsistent for Edward Cabrera. And I know he had those 2 great starts against the Athletics and the Royals at home. This was a different test against a good Mariners team in Seattle.
And so it's not going to get any
easier. Yeah,
go ahead.
Exactly. He's got the Blue Jays, I believe, next. So it's like you said, it's not going to get easier. And this is one of the weirder things that I've seen this year is Cabrera's struggles. I did not think this would happen to him.
And there are times he has looked good, and against pretty good teams that, there's moments he's looked good where he's completely shut them out, and he looks like Edward Cabrera, the one that we know. And at the start of it, and at the start of his start against the Mariners, he struck out too. He looked pretty good right from the beginning, and it was just really bad pitches that were placed at spots where just hitters were able to take a really big advantage of, and that's what screwed him over in this start. And that's what I would say. And just that's so much change in pitch mix this year for him, or pitch usage, better said, because he's always kept that fastball changeup at times where he just relies on the slider so much. I would like to see consistency in his pitch usage. I don't know if you would agree, Eli, and what would you do with Edward Cabrera? Is it time to send him down as well?
It's not about really consistency in his pitch usage. I've been begging ever since he came up for him just to throw his fastball more. But the problem is, it's just not even though he has good velocity, it's just not a really good fastball. It does not get as many swings and misses as you would expect, mainly because he doesn't command it the way that you need to, despite the velocity. And because of that, it puts him in this frustrating position where he has to throw his breaking balls more. And we've seen this pattern where maybe because he throws as many off-speed pitches as he does, he's had this chronic blister issue. I've counted at least 4 times in his major league career that he's come out of starts early due to blisters flaring up when he's supposed to go deeper into games. It looks more to me, and this is what I thought entering the year, is that it looked more to me like his future is going to be as a reliever because of this issue going deep into games and because of the fastball just not being quite as dominant a pitch as it was supposed to be when he's coming up as a prospect. Yeah. And if you are a reliever, then you don't actually need to use your fastball very much. Like, you can get away with leaning into your secondaries more. And then when he actually throws his fastball, it'd have, presumably, if he's conditioned the right way, you get a little extra velo out of the bullpen, so much so that maybe he gets away with mistakes more often than he ordinarily would as a starter. You have to pace yourself. I think that's ultimately where his future goes. In this moment, they don't actually have a solid alternative. So this is, to me, is something that they reevaluate within probably a couple weeks from now. We'll see whether Cueto actually gets back even quicker than Trevor Rogers does with this now recent setback with Trevor. Eventually, when they have a decent alternative in the rotation, I do agree that Edward is looking to me like the weakest link. And despite that, I think we all are kind of recognizing that this team, because of how young Eury is and because of how cautious they are about his future, like, it may be about more than just performance. It may just be about wanting to preserve his innings as much as possible. And they feel that because that's so paramount to keeping him healthy long term, that, it's possible that Edward may be sticking around a while just because, at least in his case, there's not that same level of Heiden's concern about his durability, and they don't have him on such a short leash. But it's just frustrating because he is kind of performing like a quintessential number 5 starter, and the expectations were a lot higher than that. So he is a serviceable pitcher, but for a team that really is right in this mix, that's not you want more than that. This rotation was supposed to be able to carry some of the deficiencies that they have elsewhere on this roster. With very few examples, you just don't see Edward put together those all-around great starts because of those. He's just a flawed pitcher, and he's now a pretty big sample of him performing this way. Last year, he put up that ERA in the low 3s, and everybody was so excited. But even then, the peripherals were saying that this isn't really going to last all that long if he just does not have either the control or the command that you typically associate with a starter, and he doesn't have quite as much swing and miss as you need to fully make up for that and still be like exactly what he was supposed to be.
Baseball America wasn't wrong. Huh? They projected him as a closer in 2025, and they certainly are on the right track.
Does he not throw a sinker anymore? Wasn't that something that everyone was excited to compare him to Sixto with? It was the movement on the fastball, and did he just completely
He's
eliminate
thrown
that?
it 9.4% of the time this year.
He's been using. I gotta be honest. There have not been a whole lot of impact sinkers that he has thrown, even though he is using it. And actually, last night he threw quite a bit of it. There's just it doesn't make an impact really. This year, guys are slugging. They're hitting 353 and slugging 588 against the sinker. In fact,
crazy.
Yeah, I think if you go back and watch, some of the really hard hit balls against him, those are against the sinkers. So he's still a really tantalizing guy because in general, he just does not give up very much hard contact at all. And at the same time, even though there's kind of a limited ceiling when you have these flaws as a pitcher, there's also kind of a higher floor just because he's very rarely going to give up. He's not going to give up a whole lot of hard contact. His stuff moves enough that guys will mishit the ball, and he's able to put runners on and still get out of it in a lot of cases just because of how many pitches he does have and because of how those pitches move. It's just overall the total package is, it's just not clicking the way that we thought it would. As simple as that.
And then the final point I wanted to put up before we talk about the roster move / injury designation transfer there is just the Seattle Mariners themselves. The Miami pitching staff was able to absolutely dominate numbers 1 through 4 in the order: Crawford, Rodriguez, France, Hernandez. And somehow 5 through 9 in the order absolutely destroyed Miami. Mike Ford with a multi-home run game, Cal Raleigh with the 3-run homer, Eugenio Suarez with a hit. I mean, is that a little concerning, Isaac, on your end, or is this just more of Seattle's a really good baseball team that has a really good lineup 1 through 9?
Yeah, I didn't. When I saw Mike Ford up, I was there, watching the game. I was like, okay, he made the big pitch there was a run on third. And I was like, okay, you made the big pitch to get the guy before him. Like, okay, just get Mike Ford out. And boy, you let Mike Ford take you deep twice. That's not gonna fly. So yeah, it would be a little concerning. It's not Julio Rodriguez beating you necessarily. It's not Ty France. It's not Teoscar. It's Mike Ford, and it's I know he's really good, but it's Cal Raleigh hitting 3-run home runs. And I don't know if I would say it's a huge deal, but yeah, it's definitely concerning. It's one thing to be beaten by the defending AL Rookie of the Year, but this isn't how it's supposed to go. If you're getting past those guys, you should be able to get past the others as well. I'm not a pitching coach, so I wouldn't be able to tell you where exactly they're going wrong, but it is a bit concerning in my opinion.
And then moving on to the injury report / roster movement that went down, I would say about an hour before the game or a couple hours. Oh, there it is. Perfect. You just saved my life. The Marlins selected contract of Archie Bradley from AAA Jacksonville. They optioned Huascar Brazoban to AAA Jacksonville, and Trevor Rogers is going to the 60-day. But I think that's retroactive since he was already on the IL. He's eligible to come off of it on Monday. All right, let's go into, I think, what we've been talking about ourselves in our private chat for like the past, I would say, couple of days is Brazoban. Would you send him down? Is he the odd man out of the bullpen? And Alex Carver would tell us he is. They should go with Bradley or Maldonado. He ended up being correct. So he's not going to shut up about that one. But Archie Bradley's now in Miami Marlins. He made his debut. He got, no offense to him, but he got rocked in his first appearance, I would say, as a Marlin. So, Isaac, your thoughts on the move? And I would say this right now. I think this Brazoban thing is temporary. I think it's just more for him to get it right, get back on track, and he's coming right back up pretty soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I would if I were a betting man, I'd say we see him again at some point. Maybe not be till September. Who knows? But it's a shame because it did seem overdue. Although I did think that they would let him work it out, but it did seem overdue. He was really struggling. I think it was 10 earned runs in his last 10.1 innings of work. It was time. He had obviously plenty of options. And it's a shame because you'd think now would be where we would have seen Nick Enright. He could have still been here. I think he would have been the guy we saw making his major league debut with Miami. But alas, he was returned to Cleveland. So it's tough because the bullpen has been the strength of this team, and Brazoban, he really was the whole bullpen for the first month and a half. Remember the Wrigley series comes to mind. He just saved this team a lot of times, and it's crazy how fickle relief arms can be. And then when it comes to Trevor, yeah, he is eligible to come back early next week, but from what we're hearing, apparently it might be a little bit longer than that. So that definitely bought Eury at least one more start, which is tonight. I would assume he gets one more after that. I think that's going to be against Toronto at home.
Yeah,
and I think that would have to be it. The hope is that Trevor's back by then. If not, maybe Cueto. He had a couple of fine innings, whatever, again, Double-A Pensacola. But it's a very strange situation. I don't know what they're going to do. If they really don't want Eury pitching in the big leagues anymore right now, they might not have a choice. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that goes.
Yeah. With Brazoban, you mentioned the Wrigley series, and that was kind of his last hurrah, making a definitively great outing in there. And ever since then, you can look at his game logs. There was like one clean outing in there out of his last 10 or 11, that stretch that you mentioned. Every single time he's it's just the lack of control. And you can notice that last year he was kind of overcoming it for most of his outings. And this year, the surprise was that he was locating his stuff like better than ever in April. That it really took me by surprise how good he was. And at the same time, it takes me by surprise a little bit, like how consistently mediocre he was recently. I think the truth is kind of the overall numbers. This year, he's a 4 ERA guy. He's a 4 fielder independent pitching guy. He's like a passable middle reliever. He's a typical middle reliever to me, just because there's going to be some inconsistency. He's not always going to know where the ball is going. And when he doesn't know where the ball is going, he just needs to get whiffs. He needs guys to chase those pitches. And like theoretically, he has these great tools to get misses. He's both his fastball and his cutter and his changeup. Most of all, like he has really nasty stuff. He just needs to get ahead in counts. And but surprisingly, like how hittable he has been for this big portion of the season, I think that this is the right move at this time. So see what you got in Archie Bradley. And even beyond him, I think the next man up should be Anthony Maldonado. I don't know what else Anthony Maldonado has to do. Even going back to last year at AAA, he's been amazing for that role. And Matt Barnes is probably just a couple of weeks away from returning, even though my expectations for him aren't especially high. Yeah, overall, we've been spoiled by this bullpen. Most of the guys in this bullpen are still pretty great. You could go through basically all the names. There are probably 5 or 6 guys that even ahead of these others in the depth chart that are really good at what they do. So overall, it's been a strength of the team, and it actually looks kind of sustainable. You just never know when one particular guy is going to lose it. That Isaac kind of summed it up, that these guys can flip a switch from being dominant to being unusable in a hurry. So that's why you just need a lot of them. You just need a whole lot of depth at this position. You got to be ready to churn in those spots, when it makes sense to do so.
With Brazoban, and this is a stat from Fish on the Farm, after he has allowed 10 earned runs in his last 10.1 innings pitched. So that shows you kind of how bad Brazoban has been. And when you look at the game logs, his last good start was against the Padres, where he struck out all 3 in 2.2 innings pitched. So I think with that being said, we can move on quickly to Eury. I think Isaac kind of teased it a little bit with what the situation with Eury is. We thought today, June 14th, would have been his last start, with expecting Trevor to come back on Monday with the Blue Jay series coming up. He would have just sent Eury down. He would have made a start. But Trevor did have a setback now. It was a discomfort in the right arm, so his non-throwing shoulder. He was ready. He was warming up, and all of a sudden, he was taken out. He didn't even finish his warm-up, and this is where we kind of come to think of, does Eury make another start? What do you think the Marlins should do with Eury? We've talked about this, I think, the past 2 platforms we've been on with the Spaces, and then now here on Fish on First Live. But I want to get Isaac's thought. 6-man rotation, is that what they really need? Is that what you think they should do? Because we've already kind of established there's no real need to trade any starting pitching depth to add Eury and keep him there. And besides that, I mean, you right now have 7 starters who are going to be healthy in about a couple weeks, hoping Trevor is back and ready to go. And you have to make room for all of them.
You hope you have 7 healthy starters in a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's, I find that very hard to believe that'll happen. And when it comes to the 6-man rotation, Ely summed it up pretty well on his pod. And it seems like there's more benefit than anything. You're the one thing that you are losing is Sandy pitching every 5 days. He'll be every 6 days, but you're also limiting Eury's innings at the same time, having to go basically once a week, which is what you want to do. So it's tough when to think about that, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. We hear that it's going to be 110, 120 innings for the year, and that includes minor league innings. So if he pitches every 5-6 days, at least 5 innings, he's going to hit that by early August. So not sure what you're going to do then. Even if you, let's say, slow him down and have him pitch once every 7 to 10 days, I don't think that's very good for the arm either. Like I said, you don't know when you're going to be in this position again. He's never pitched more than 80 innings in his life, so I don't know why they were just so careful with him the last couple of seasons. I know there were some injury concerns, but hey, I think this 20-year-old would be able to handle it if he had to reach, 130, 140 innings at most. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I do think he'll be sent down no matter what, whether it's Cueto or Trevor taking his spot. I think the Toronto start would be his last one, no matter what. Even if they call up, Sean Moramondo, anyone to come pitch, I think Eury's last one will be against Toronto. Unfortunately, not saying I agree with it, but that's what I'm feeling.
And I wanna ask, when it comes to the development of a pitcher, and I wouldn't know this, maybe Ely or Isaac would, but when do you start kind of ripping the bandage off for Eury and stretching out those innings, letting him go 7, maybe even 8 if he's on a roll, extending that pitch count? Because they have to do it at some point. I mean, you're not going to keep this guy limited to 110, 120 innings pitched throughout a whole season, including the minor leagues. That's just not possible when it comes to a pitcher like Eury, and especially in the position where Miami is, where right now, if the season ends today, they would have the second wild card spot.
Well, I appreciate your thought on that. I think it is pretty simple. They are going to limit him this year. He is not going to pitch into the 7th inning this year. It's not happening this year. That is a next year concern. The generally agreed upon Major League Development Plan, which I should mention has had no success in terms of keeping pitchers healthy. But this is just the general thought process, is that guys, you incrementally increase their innings from one year to the next. So with Eury, it's usually somewhere between 30 to 40 innings. If everything goes well, hopefully they're actually available to pitch, then 30 to 40 from one year to the next. So this year, that's how they come up with the number around 110 or 115. And then the year after that, it'll be pretty close to, full-length starter. They could get him to 140-ish or 150. And then it's really 2 years from now. It's really 2025 that they'll actually have the training wheels off and they'll be able to perform like a real starter. And that's frustrating, but that's the reality of just being so young. This is just a generally agreed upon philosophy here with guys that are in their very early 20s, is that they're not ready to pitch every 5 or 6 days for a stretch of 6-7 months. They're just, again, I wouldn't be smart enough to tell you exactly what physiological benefit difference is being made by limiting them at this very arbitrary point and spacing it out. That's just how it's done. And just understanding that that is kind of what they're going to do. I think the obvious thing here to point out is that he's been so effective so far. And I've been really encouraged, especially the last couple outings, because the first few, you could see some flaws and some, I guess, some rough edges around him. And it looked like he was kind of overachieving. And I'd say more recently, it's been more legitimately great. Like, it looks more sustainably great with him. And it just doesn't make sense to option somebody to the minors if they are already a great pitcher in the majors. It's as simple as that. If you're trying to win games, then he should be in the majors. But if he's not going to be available to throw a certain number of innings this year by your own team decided restriction on him, then put him in the bullpen. Then just use him occasionally in the bullpen for multi-inning appearances where he's taking over in a clean inning, because when you put him in, you expect him to throw up zeros whenever he's doing that. You can't take that for granted. You can't take the ability to prevent runs for granted. The perfect pitcher is like 2022 Sandy Alcantara, where he throws all the innings and he prevents runs at an elite level. And Eury, maybe he becomes that guy 2 or 3 years from now. In the meantime, he is on that same level in terms of run prevention. So you should use him to prevent runs on your team. to me, it is pretty simple that he should go to the bullpen. There is some history of this with other young pitchers that go on to be great, successful starters early in their careers. If they're just not ready for that full season workload, you put them in the bullpen and you use them as relievers, and they'll get outs in those roles like that. So that is, to me, the pretty obvious solution that would limit his innings, but yet he's still contributing at the major league level. And then you put him, you obviously go into next year with him as one of your foundational starters. I just don't see any logic behind removing him from your major league team if he is one of your better major league pitchers.
Well, Julio Urias was someone they did that with, right? He pitched
Many, yes, that is probably the best example to bring up because of how they are in the same bucket in terms of being ridiculously young early in their career. Yeah, with Urias, it was apparent very early on that he was a great pitcher. But just to give you an example in terms of the innings, like he didn't pitch anything close to a full season until he was 24. He came up when he was 19, and yet he wasn't. The wheels didn't, the training wheels didn't come off until 5 years later. And he had an injury in between there that really slowed him down to his shoulder. Even coming back from that injury, they were very careful with him. And even unfortunately, it's such a complicated situation where even now, Urias, he's supposed to be entering his prime. He's coming off his best year, and now he's hurt again. So these guys, when they're healthy, you can't take for granted guys that are healthy and prevent runs. You just don't know how long they're going to stay healthy for. As much as you want to take these steps to coddle them, these steps just don't work in every single case. There's so many cases where you do everything to protect them, and it just doesn't work. So it just this will be released after the Mariners start. Maybe he gets the doors blown off. Maybe there's a big fatal flaw that is exposed. I have confidence that's not going to be the case. And I'd love to see them just get creative and find a way to still utilize whatever innings that he does have, utilize them all on the big league team over the course of the rest of the season.
Imagine him and Puck at the back end of the bullpen, a couple innings from Eury, and you have Puck close it out. That's a playoff team right there with Eury at the back end of that pen, with Rogers and Cueto solidifying the back end of the rotation. I couldn't agree more. And just to add on to that, this coddling of innings, that like you said, it just never works. It reminds me of what they did with Jose Fernandez, and it was just like this. They did not let him go more than 5 innings, never let him reach 100 pitches. I don't think he ever threw a complete game in his entire career. Obviously, it was cut short. But you can be as safe as you want with any pitcher. That's not going to prevent him from getting hurt. So while he is healthy, while he is efficient, while he is good, use him, because he's going to get hurt eventually. And that's what the statistics tell you. 1 in every 3 pitchers suffers from the Tommy John surgery or will undergo Tommy John surgery. So let's see how this plays out.
And then quick update, Joey Wendell, again, out in the lineup tonight for Miami. So 3rd straight day he's out. Moving on to another injury news, Dax Fulton is going through a UCL repair. It's what it's called, Eli.
Yeah.
So he will miss the remainder of the season. It always seemed like something was up with Dax since the start because he was just not putting up the usual numbers. A 5.18 ERA, 4.68 FIP. He was walking guys at a 5.18 walks per 9. Like, it wasn't going well for him. Since the start of spring training, it just seemed as if something was up with Dax. So, Eli, just your thoughts on the injury, how long this could take for him, and just what it means for Miami's system, because now that's another possible trade piece that you had out of the door. Basically in this case, out for the year. No one's really going to want him unless there's a taker, but highly unlikely.
Right. What's particularly concerning here is that they drafted him coming off Tommy John surgery. That is why he actually fell to the 2nd round in the first place. He was super highly regarded as a prep pitcher, and he was able to fall to them because of that little bit of durability concern. So to see less than 4 years later after his original surgery, to see what is a very related issue come up, even if it doesn't require a second Tommy John, man, only 21 years old and already now with this amount of significant wear on his elbow. You mentioned it, that he just it didn't look quite the same. His stuff just wasn't quite as crisp this year. He only had maybe one truly great outing with Pensacola before going on the IL a full month ago. And then the other ones, it was just a combination of, it was just overall mediocrity. Stuff just didn't play the same. He wasn't missing quite as many bats. So either he was getting into bad counts, he was putting guys on base or he was just getting hit around. And overall, it was an ERA a little over 5 in those 7 starts this year for somebody that we thought was the second best prospect in this organization, right behind Eury. That kind of level of ability also speaks to, man, when Eury graduates from prospect eligibility, like who is the next man up? There's just it's such a steep drop off in talent from him to everybody else. Not only because of talent, some of that is talent, but a lot of it is also this combination of injury concern. As you mentioned, all the other top pitching prospects in this organization are hurt or recently hurt. Jake Eder finally getting close to being a normal pitcher again, coming back from both his Tommy John and then a foot injury. And Max Meyer, that's still going to keep him off the field until likely the start of next year, his Tommy John surgery with him. So these are guys, I mentioned all those guys together because they're all drafted in 2020. So 3 years ago, and pitchers are typically quicker to the big leagues if they pan out. And Max Meyer got to the big leagues very briefly before hurting himself. That was a draft class, I remember, that was very highly regarded for this team because of the upside and also because of the potential for them to get there quickly. It is really surprising that 3 years later, a couple of those guys got traded. And then the last guy who's still with the organization, Zach McCambley, he's kind of being converted into a reliever from the ground up. So that's just a big question mark is what you're getting from him. Yeah, it's surprising that not a single one of those guys is actively contributing to the team. And really, Eder is the only one that has a chance to potentially do something by the very end of the year. Yeah.
Anything on your end, Isaac, or
no? No, Kyle Hurt would have been nice. He was the last guy of that draft, right? Kyle Hurt. Yeah, no, I guess the only good thing is that it's not fully reconstructing of the UCL, but it's tough, man. I think Eli really hit it on the button in the sense that they really, not only do they not have a next man up when it comes to starting pitching, that farm system looks significantly worse once Eury does graduate. So I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, I think Eli summed it up pretty well.
All right, so before we end it, as we all know, Miami is in contention for the wild card, and at this point, they would be making it in the second wild card. So with that being said, obviously, we see the needs of the team. Obviously, the blaring need is catcher. So we're going to go through some quick trade targets. But before that, I quickly want to go by just the names that could possibly head out the door for Miami. I know Eli mentioned Pat Monteverde in his article today. That's definitely a name to keep an eye out for. But on the Major League roster, there aren't really many. The only impending free agents for next season will be Wendell and Cooper. Obviously, with how things have lined up, and maybe one of those guys goes out the door, but the other one probably stays. So, Isaac, how do you see the trade deadline working out for Miami? Obviously, it's on August 1st at 6 p.m., but just looking at it in an earlier stance where they are right now.
It's going to be an interesting one because Kim has never been in a situation to even consider being a buyer. And it looks like if things just, like I said, they hover around 500 for the next 4 or 6 weeks, they'll have no choice. And so I do think I would be completely shocked. Like I wrote this on Twitter the other day. I'd be completely shocked if they don't somehow improve the ball club, mainly on offense. I don't think they're going to add to the rotation or bullpen at all. I think they like what they have in-house at AAA as well. So I do think Miami could make a small but important upgrade, specifically at the catcher position. I don't know what's going on with Joey Wendell. I don't know if there's been a report yet, but I liked what I was seeing from him. So I wouldn't say shortstop is as big of a priority for me for this particular season as it is for like the next few seasons. I think catcher is the area they really need to upgrade because Fortes is doing fine. He's whatever. But him and another catcher like the ones that we're about to mention, I think would make a huge difference for this ball club.
The update with Wendell, and I'm trying to look for it now, was I think something with his abdomen.
He missed time.
Left adductor / groin. There it is. He's likely off the bench, so he should be available off the bench. Left adductor / groin.
So that was from Jordan McPherson of the Miami Herald last night. He was not used off the bench. It was a blowout loss, but he So presumably that's still the same. The groin is unrelated. But his injury this year was an intercostal strain, which is I don't really want to demonstrate exactly how this stuff is related to another. But yeah, so
Only
like
on
mildly related to what cost him time earlier in the year. But I think this is a little further down. Hopefully he gets through it. You know, durability has been kind of one of the big things holding back his value as a player each of the last couple of seasons. And he's just been playing well, as you mentioned, having a weird year, but overall having a
Very weird.
decent. He's been overall pretty good for them on both sides of the ball in recent weeks. So we need him back. I guess I should just mention, to be factually accurate, they do have another pending free agent. That'd be Dylan Floro. And if we talk about this bullpen being a pretty deep bullpen, where we like a lot of these guys, and Floro, he's had some very high highs this year, but also, you know, he's laid an egg in a couple of very important spots as well. So they're not going to be extending him. And if they feel really good about their other pen options, especially a couple other guys in AAA that maybe if they finally deserve an opportunity, and if Brazoban gets trained out, like Floro is a guy that even if you're contending, like I wouldn't be shocked if they try to recoup a little bit of young talent in return, maybe save a little bit of money, sending him out in order to spend that money acquiring a veteran at another position that they have a greater need. We keep touching on this, that it has been such a pleasant surprise how good this bullpen has been. And we're pretty deep into the year. And for the most part, it's still a pretty impressive bullpen. So you got to start buying into, you know, what your team is at this point and realize that if this is the strength of the team, then you can make moves off of that in order to address other areas that aren't quite as strong.
So with that being said, we all have, I think, a name or two we want to quickly mention. So we'll start with Isaac, Ely, and then I'll wrap it up.
The only area of weakness that's larger than just simply catcher is left-handed power with Jesus Sanchez. When he was gone, Jazz Chisholm has been out for a while now. I think they could really use, you know, some sort of lefty bat, especially at the catcher position. I think Yasmani Grandal fits that mold. He's on the last year of his deal, if I'm not mistaken, so he shouldn't be signed through 2023. He's in the last year of his deal. He shouldn't be too expensive. They would have to offset some money. Maybe that's somewhere that Dylan Floro could be a part of. Obviously, that would be nearly enough. But that's someone that I really think would really raise the floor of this lineup, hit in the middle of it, and offer power from both sides of the plate. And he's just someone that's been good for, you know, almost his entire career. He had a really bad year last year. Only played 99 games, but he would be the ideal candidate for the Marlins to acquire. In my opinion, Miami guy, Cuban guy. I think he fits the mold really well. I don't think he's known too much for his defensive skills, but he can have it all.
Yeah. He does have a noodle arm at this stage of his career. With him, he's a fascinating guy where he became such a easy player to shift against. And now with the shift going away, his batting average on balls in play is like the highest it's ever been. So that is leading to him being a more consistent offensive player where there's more hits to go around. I have a catcher as well. I wrote an entire article on him earlier today on the website, Fish on First, that people can check out. Yan Gomes of the Chicago Cubs. So with Grandal, I think it's probably slightly more likely that he's going to be available just because he is in the final year of his deal and because his team is, I think it's harder to see that team really putting things together on the south side. And then on the north side, the Cubs got off to that good start, but kind of since then, they've been very underwhelming with them. Even when having a lot of their guys healthy, there's still a little bit of time for them to straighten things out. And they're in a division where I don't think they're going to give up on things in a hurry. Yet Gomes is a guy that even if they are kind of in it, I could see them moving him just because of to recoup some value on their own end to address other needs. The fact that they have a youngish catcher in Miguel Amaya, who used to be a top prospect. And if they want to find out exactly what they have in him, they need to play him somewhere. At the moment, the Cubs are actually carrying 3 catchers on the roster at the same time. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's available. But with Gomes, he is, I did not realize this. He is the very best catcher at hitting left-handed pitching this year. He is a 180 WRC plus against lefties. Absolutely destroys lefties this year. So that's that's where you can find opportunities for him to play where you feel pretty good about him having good at bats when he has a platoon advantage. He's been around such a long time, and he's been a little more consistent than somebody like Grandal. Almost every single year, he is average or better in terms of offense that you get from the catcher's position. And defensively, I think he's all right. He grades really poorly as a pitch framer so far this year. Then again, Jacob Stallings does as well. I just feel like he's a pretty clear improvement over Stallings in a lot of regards, having the power that Stallings doesn't, defensively still being passable, being able to actually catch runners despite not having a very strong throwing arm himself. And he has a club option for next year. When you're talking about not just this year, but also 2024, it's really unclear what the Marlins are going to do at that position. So if he plays well down the stretch, it's a $6 million club option, which is entirely reasonable if you expect him to play half of your games or anything close to that at that spot. I think it's a really relatively safe deal for somebody that's really highly regarded for his intangibles, has a lot of playoff experience. He's been a World Series champion with the Nationals. He is an older player. He's about to turn 36. So you just never know exactly when physically the body is going to give out for a catcher. But I think this would be a really nice gamble that probably wouldn't cost a whole lot in terms of prospect capital.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, and it's probably out of all the names we're gonna mention in the next month, it's probably the most attainable name. I don't think the price would be too much. Obviously, I think Ely, you send Monteverde and cash over to Chicago for Gomes, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna mention probably it's a AAA name, a guy who's being blocked. So we've mentioned that another possibility is obviously going to the minor leagues. The market isn't too strong for catchers on the major league level besides Grandal and Gomes. So why not go into AAA and go get Iván Herrera, who to many was he was considered the heir apparent to Yadier Molina, who obviously now Wilson Contreras is on the team, so he's once again blocked. He didn't have too much success at the big league level. He only played 11 games though. So this year in AAA, hitting 296, 425, 531, and 956 with 6 home runs, 34 RBIs, a 142 WRC plus, 23-year-old catcher who absolutely dominates righties, something that Miami's had issues with this year, or at least towards the beginning of the year they did. He's not a free agent until 2029, I want to say. I mean, no, I'm wrong, not 2029. He still has his years left. He has his years left, so it makes sense. Not only would it be helpful for this year, but moving forward, you get a young catcher finally, someone who is developed correctly all the way through the minor leagues by a really good organization, despite the record this season. They're a really good organization, and this it makes a lot of sense. And with Grandal, he's a impending free agent at the end of the season with his huge contract right now, and you don't know if he's going to come back, and it makes sense. And there's obviously other catchers I would love to talk about in the minor league levels, but right now one that's being blocked is Herrera. The only other one that I could think of is Corey Lee of the Houston Astros. That would be a cool name to bring on for Miami. Another guy who right now being blocked by Martin Maldonado. So that's really about it for catchers. Eli, you're muted.
To mention finally on the catching note, quietly, Stallings has been playing at a more adequate level lately.
Somehow,
he's thrown out a few runners. He's actually getting on base in almost all of his starts over the last 9 games, over the last couple. Well, I think that's about 3 weeks at this point. So in a small sample, he's been playing close to respectability. That's why these decisions wait until the deadline. If he somehow keeps that up, from now through July, then if they don't see a significant upgrade out there, if he's not a clear DFA candidate come the deadline, then they're not going to do anything. They're going to, as Craig misreported in the Herald, they're keeping an eye on the catcher market. They absolutely should. Stallings doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore after how poorly he played for most of last year. That being said, this is not the only position that they'll go after, and it's not one that they necessarily will make a move unless there's something out there that definitely makes sense.
And then the final, I guess, position that Isaac and Eli mentioned was shortstop. I mean, you look at the market, I can't name a shortstop right now that I would really, really want Miami to go after. So looking internally at Jacob Amaya, that would be a name that I know I've been mentioning for a while. Isaac has as well. Isaac, if Miami goes into the deadline, no shortstop, do you call up Amaya? Especially if Birdie continues to play, not to the level you want.
Yeah, you asked me this the other day. I think it was on the Spaces if it's the perfect platoon situation, and it really is. I wrote my season preview for Jacob Amaya. He crushes left-handers, and this season has really been no different. And since May 12th, he's actually has an OPS of 1,000. in the last month. So yeah, I think maybe Eli was touched on it pretty well. Is that John Birdie? It's not necessarily that guy to be starting on the left side of the infield every single day like he pretty much has been. And Jacob Amaya would do so many good things. He's elite with the glove. We all know that. They got a younger Miguel Rojas for him. I was hoping that last year Miguel Rojas would be that perfect platoon with Joey Wendell. They didn't necessarily try that route. I think today, this season is a perfect opportunity to try that platoon. And I guess they just don't like it. Obviously, Skip Schumacher's here and it's not Don Mattingly anymore, so maybe he'd be more. He was very excited about Jacob Amaya when we spoke about him in spring training. I think it's only a matter of time till we see him up in the big leagues. And yeah, instead of getting Hampson and Birdie at short tonight, where Joey Wendell's a little bit banged up, you'd have Jacob Amaya facing Luis Castillo, and you feel a little bit better about the lineup. I think seeing him in there rather than the names that we have than they have.
And with that, I think there's not much more there's nothing else to cover right now unless I'm missing something, Eli or Isaac.
I just want to throw out there, this is a name that probably came up last offseason or the year before. That's not on the market now, but potentially by the time we get to the deadline, Willy Adames of the Brewers.
Ooh.
He's been a fantastic player a couple times. He's got great power for that position. Yeah. This year, a down year for him, and it's a down year for the Brewers. They just lost again. They dropped down to 500. So even in a competitive division, last year they were in an even better spot. And what did they do? They traded Josh Hader at the deadline.
Yeah, you're right.
Now that was kind of a unique situation, but not really. I mean, with Adames, it's the same case where he's a very good player. Unless they are really confident in being able to extend him long term, then they might try to deal him while his value is still relatively high. So I don't know if the Marlins have the chips in order to get him. It would have to take a pretty unique situation for him to become available. That's just the name I want to keep my eyes on for a Brewers team that I think as I said, they've done a similar deal like this before. So if they are not, clear-cut favorites in their division, the way that people thought they would be, I think there's the possibility for a sneaky blockbuster like that to emerge.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about this deadline, and I probably should have mentioned this right from the start when we started talking about this, is the sellers this season, yeah, they're selling, but they don't have many pieces to offer. And probably in this case for Miami, pieces that Miami wouldn't need. Because when you look at the Royals, you're obviously going to think of Scott Barlow and Aroldis Chapman, but as nice as those guys would be on the Miami bullpen, you don't really need them. And then you look at Athletics, I mean, they're the Oakland A's. There are a couple guys I keep my eye on, or maybe 2 or 3 guys, but besides that, there's not really much there. And then obviously the Cardinals, they have their guys, but you really think that that's still a weird situation there with the Cardinals. So it's a weird deadline. There's not many names out there that are as flashy as we did see last year with Hader and all these other guys that were moving around the major leagues. But with that, I think we could wrap it up. Isaac, any last words or anything else I missed?
No, it promises to be a very fun pitching matchup tonight in Eury against Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo always dominates the Miami Marlins, his former team that traded him twice. So it should be a fun one. And if it is, in fact, Eury's last start, make sure to enjoy him because he's a special kid.
All right, well, with that being said, Eli, Isaac, myself, see you guys all in 2 weeks. Peace out and go Fish.